Maxwell Thorne never considered himself the suspicious man. 15 years working for naval intelligence had taught him to trust his instincts. But with Bianca, his wife of 9 years, he'd always believed he could let his guard down. Their home in Colorado's mountain country had been their sanctuary since his retirement 3 years ago, a place where he could finally shed the hypervigilance that had defined his career. At 42, Max ran a successful private security consulting firm. Leveraging his military connections and expertise, it afforded them a comfortable life. Their custom timber home overlooking the mountains, Lucas's private school tuition, and Bianca's art studio, where she created sculptures that had begun attracting attention from upscale galleries. The first hairline fractures in their marriage appeared 8 months ago, when Bianca began working with Preston Davenport, a wealthy art dealer who had discovered her at a local exhibition. Preston owned Sterling Gallery, the most prestigious art space in St. Louis. He was 55, divorced 3 times, with a cultivated charm that opened doors throughout the art world. "He believes I could have installations in New York by next year," Bianca had told him, eyes bright with excitement as she returned from yet another late meeting. Her auburn hair caught the kitchen light as she moved around, too energized to sit still. "Can you imagine? Me in Manhattan." Max had smiled and embraced her. "You've always deserved recognition," he said, meaning it. Her talent had never been in question. But as weeks stretched into months, the late nights grew more frequent. Texts from Preston arrived at odd hours. Bianca began changing her passwords. Small lies accumulated. Dinner with a client that never appeared on the gallery's schedule. Workshops that couldn't be verified. Max had tried talking to her twice. The first conversation ended with reassurances that felt hollow. The second devolved into Bianca accusing him of suffocating her newfound independence. "You've had your career," she'd snapped. "This is finally my time." He'd backed off, not wanting to be the husband who stifled his wife's success. But the intelligence officer in him couldn't ignore the warning signs. The new clothes, the subtle change in her perfume, the way she angled her phone away when messages arrived. Tonight, Lucas was having dinner at a friend's house, and Max sat alone at their dining table, nursing a glass of bourbon when his phone buzzed. A text from Bianca. "Preston thinks we should celebrate the Aspen Commission. He suggested a hike tomorrow at Eagle's Precipice. Says the view inspires him. Could you and Lucas join? Would mean a lot to have you both there." Eagle's Precipice was one of the more challenging trails in the area, with spectacular views but treacherous drop-offs, not typically where one would bring a 7-year-old. Max felt something cold settle in his stomach. He typed back, "Sounds nice. What time?" Her response came quickly, 10 a.m. Bring your camera. The views are stunning. After 15 years of reading people in high-stakes situations, Max recognized when something was profoundly wrong. He poured another finger of bourbon and began mentally cataloging everything he knew about Preston Davenport. Later that night, after Bianca had gone to bed, Max checked on Lucas. The boy was sleeping with his favorite dinosaur tucked under one arm, his tablet glowing softly on the nightstand. Max moved to turn it off when he noticed it was open to Bianca's email. She must have logged in while showing Lucas something and forgotten to sign out. There, at the top of her inbox, was a message from Preston with the subject line, "Confirmation. Zurich accounts ready." Max's blood ran cold. With careful precision, he took screenshots, sent them to his own secure email, then restored the tablet exactly as he'd found it. He didn't sleep that night. Eagle's Precipice lived up to its name. A winding trail climbed through dense pine forest before opening onto granite outcroppings with dizzying views of the valley below. The autumn air carried a crisp bite, leaves crunching beneath their hiking boots as they ascended. Preston had arrived in an ostentatious Range Rover, dressed in hiking gear that looked fresh from the store. He greeted Max with practiced warmth, clapping him on the shoulder like an old friend. "So glad you could join us, Max. And this must be the young man Bianca talks about constantly." He crouched to Lucas's level. "I hear you're quite the artist yourself." Lucas, shy around strangers, pressed closer to Max's side. "I just like dinosaurs," he mumbled. "A man of specific interests." "I respect that," Preston said, standing. Bianca seemed tense, her smile too bright as she fussed with her backpack. "I packed lunch for everyone. We can eat at the summit." The first hour of the hike passed with forced conversation about art markets and gallery openings. Max noted how Preston stayed close to Bianca, their hands occasionally brushing. Lucas had fallen into step beside Max, unusually quiet. "You okay, buddy?" Max asked softly. Lucas nodded but cast a wary glance ahead. "Mom was on her computer really late last night," he whispered. "She got mad when she saw me." Max squeezed his son's shoulder. "What were you doing up so late?" "I had a bad dream. But when I went to find you, you were in your office. So I went to Mom, but..." Lucas trailed off. "But what?" "She was talking to someone. On video. She was saying mean things about you." Max's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice steady. "What kind of mean things?" "That you were..." Lucas searched for the word. "An obstacle. And that you wouldn't let her be free." They rounded a bend, and Preston called back. "Almost there. The best view is just ahead." The trail narrowed as they approached the cliff edge. A wooden safety rail, weathered and splintering, was the only barrier between the path and an 800-foot drop to the jagged rocks below. "Come look at this view, Max," Bianca called, her voice carrying an unfamiliar edge. She and Preston stood near the rail, both smiling expectantly. "Wait here a second," Max murmured to Lucas, stepping forward alone. As he approached, something in Preston's stance changed, a subtle shift in weight, a tensing of shoulders that Max recognized from combat situations. Moving with the speed that had kept him alive in war zones, Max pivoted just as Preston launched. But he miscalculated. It wasn't him they wanted first. "Lucas!" he shouted, spinning to see Bianca already behind their son, her hands on his small shoulders. What happened next occurred in fragments of horrifying clarity. Bianca's push, Lucas's scream, Max's desperate lunge toward his son, Preston's tackle from behind, the railing splintering, the sickening sensation of freefall. Max twisted in the air, pulling Lucas against his chest, trying to position his body to take the brunt of the impact. They crashed through pine branches, the wood snapping and tearing at their clothes and skin before they slammed onto a narrow rock shelf 30 feet below the main cliff edge. The impact knocked the breath from Max's lungs. Sharp pain lanced through his left leg and ribs. Lucas lay motionless on top of him. "Lucas!" he gasped, panic surging. "Lucas!" The boy stirred with a whimper. Blood trickled from a cut on his forehead, but his eyes fluttered open. "Dad!" he whispered. Then louder, "Dad!" "Sheh!" Max pressed a finger to his lips, pulling Lucas close. Above them, voices carried in the clear mountain air. "Can you see them?" Bianca's voice, strained with something that wasn't quite concern. "No," Preston replied. "The drop is over 800 feet to the bottom. No one could survive that. We need to call it in now." "Are you sure?" Bianca asked. "Trust me," Preston said firmly. "I've arranged accidents before. They're gone. Make the call. Remember, you're distraught. You watched your husband and son fall when the railing gave way. You tried to grab them, but couldn't reach. Understand?" "Yes," Bianca's voice steadied. "I understand." Lucas trembled against Max's chest, tears streaming silently down his face. "Mom tried to." He couldn't finish. "I know," Max whispered, rage and pain competing for dominance. "But listen to me very carefully, Lucas. We need to stay absolutely quiet until they're gone. Can you be brave for me?" Lucas nodded, his small face hardening with a resolve no 7-year-old should have to muster. They lay still as death while Bianca's theatrical wails echoed down the cliffside. Her performance for the 911 operator was convincing. A grieving wife and mother, shattered by unimaginable tragedy. Only when the voices faded did Max dare to move, biting back a groan as he examined his injuries. His left leg was broken, and at least 2 ribs were cracked. Lucas had fared better, protected by Max's body, but was badly bruised with possibly a mild concussion. "Dad," Lucas whispered as Max tore strips from his shirt to bind his leg. "I need to tell you something important. Last night, on Mom's computer, I saw pictures of passports. They had her picture, but different names. And there were pictures of other people, too. In a folder called Chimera. Mom said that was the name of her new art project, but it didn't look like art." Max stared at his son, pieces clicking into terrible alignment. Chimera. He knew that name from his intelligence days. A shadow organization suspected of everything from art forgery to targeted killings disguised as accidents. "There's something else," Lucas continued, his voice small. "I saw a list. It had your name on it. And next to it, it said, 'Eliminate before extraction.'" Max pulled his son close, his mind racing through survival scenarios. They were presumed dead, which gave them their only advantage. But they were injured on a remote cliff with no supplies, and the woman he'd shared his life with for 9 years had just tried to murder them. "Listen to me, Lucas," he said, looking into his son's eyes. "From this moment on, Max and Lucas Thorne are dead. At least until we figure out what we're dealing with. Can you understand that?" Lucas nodded solemnly. "Like going undercover?" "Exactly like that," Max confirmed, forcing confidence into his voice despite the pain radiating through his body. "And our first mission is to get off this mountain. Then we hunt." 3 days later, Dr. Howard Campbell finished stitching the gash on Max's forehead in the back room of his veterinary clinic. "You want to tell me why I'm patching up a dead man and his son?" Howard asked, snipping the surgical thread. His weathered face remained neutral, but concern showed in his eyes. He and Max had served 2 tours together in Afghanistan before Howard had retrained as a veterinarian. "The less you know, the better," Max replied, testing the makeshift splint on his leg. The break wasn't as bad as he'd feared, a stable fracture that wouldn't require surgery if he was careful. Howard glanced at Lucas, who was sleeping on a dog bed in the corner, wrapped in clean blankets. "That boy's been through hell." "Max Thorne's talking about the tragic accident at Eagle's Precipice. Search and rescue spent 2 days looking for your bodies, and they won't find them," Max said grimly. Howard exhaled slowly. "My cabin on Sommel Creek is empty. No one knows I own it. As for IDs," he hesitated. "There's a woman in St. Louis. Former military intelligence, like you, specializes in helping people disappear. Goes by Finch. Can you contact her?" "I can," Max replied. "But Max, whatever you're involved in," he started, but Max cut in, his voice flat. "They're connected to Chimera." Howard's face drained of color. "Christ, that's a name I haven't heard since Kandahar." "You've encountered them?" "Not directly. But there were rumors, operations gone wrong, intelligence leaks that got our people killed. Always whispers about Chimera." Howard ran a hand through his thinning hair. "What's your play here?" Max's eyes hardened. "First, we become ghosts. Then I find out exactly what Bianca and Preston are involved in. And then," he glanced at Lucas to ensure he was still sleeping, "I dismantle their entire world." Howard studied his friend's face. The Max I knew followed rules. Headlines he wouldn't cross. That Max died at the bottom of a cliff. He touched the bandage on his forehead. "I need a phone. Untraceable." Howard pulled an old flip phone from his desk drawer. "Burner. Cash purchased. No connection to me." He hesitated. "The funeral's tomorrow. Closed caskets, of course. Who's handling arrangements?" "Your wife. She's playing the grieving widow perfectly. The art dealer hasn't left her side." Howard's disgust was evident. Local papers calling it a tragic accident. Faulty safety railing that the Parks Department should have replaced years ago. Max absorbed this with cold calculation. "I need to see the news coverage. While Howard pulled up articles on his tablet, Max gently woke Lucas. The boy had been remarkably resilient, following Max's instructions without question as they'd made their painful descent from the cliff ledge, navigated through the forest to avoid rescue teams, and finally reached Howard's clinic under cover of darkness. "How are you feeling, buddy?" Max asked. Lucas rubbed his eyes. "My head still hurts a little. Dr. Campbell has a safe place for us to stay while I get better," Max explained gently. "Like a secret hideout." Howard handed Lucas a chocolate bar and a small stuffed wolf. "My patients usually get a lollipop, but I think you've earned something better." Lucas accepted both with a solemn nod. "Thank you, sir." The boy's formality broke something in Max's heart. Children Lucas's age should be carefree, not hiding from murderous parents in veterinary clinics. Howard showed Max the news articles, photographs of Bianca being comforted by Preston at the search site, quotes from her about Max being the most devoted father and the love of my life. The calculated performance made his stomach turn. "There's something else," Howard said quietly, pulling up a banking app. "I checked your accounts. They've been emptied." Max had expected as much. How quickly can Finch get us new identities? 3 days, if I call in some favors. But it'll cost. "Money isn't a problem," Max replied. At Howard's questioning look, Max explained, "I learned some lessons in naval intelligence. I've maintained offshore accounts, emergency funds that Bianca knows nothing about." "Smart man," Howard nodded. "I'll arrange a meeting with Finch." That night, in Howard's cabin deep in the Colorado wilderness, Max sat watching Lucas sleep. The boy's face was finally peaceful after days of fear. On the rough wooden table before him lay the burner phone, a notebook filled with his cramped handwriting, and Howard's laptop connected to a secure VPN. Max had spent hours researching Preston Davenport, digging beyond the polished public profile. The art dealer had a carefully constructed past, but Max found inconsistencies, periods where Preston seemed to vanish, business connections that dissolved mysteriously, former associates who had died in accidents. More disturbing were the patterns he found when searching for Chimera. Nothing direct. The organization was too careful for that. But analyzing Art World News revealed suspicious parallels between Preston's career trajectory and a series of high-profile forgery scandals, thefts from private collections, and the occasional unexplained death of a rival dealer or collector. Bianca's involvement was harder to determine. Had she been recruited by Preston? Was she with Chimera before they'd even met? Had their entire marriage been a long-term operation? The thought made his hands shake with rage. 9 years, a child together, all while she waited for the right moment to eliminate him. Max closed the laptop and moved to the window, looking out at the moonlit forest. In 3 days, they would have new identities. Within a week, they could be anywhere in the world. But running wasn't in Max's nature. Not when Lucas had nearly died. Not when the woman who had shared his bed had watched him fall with cold calculation. His phone buzzed with a text from Howard. Finch confirmed. Meeting tomorrow, 11 p.m. Max sent a brief acknowledgement, then turned back to his son. In the soft lamplight, he could see both Bianca and himself in Lucas's features. The thought that should have brought comfort now twisted like a knife. "I promise you," he whispered to his sleeping child, "they will pay for what they've done, and we will never look back." 3 months after their deaths, Max, now living as Daniel Foster, sat in a nondescript sit-in outside Sterling Gallery in Denver. His hair was dyed gray at the temples, his formerly clean-shaven face now sporting a well-trimmed beard. Tinted glasses and subtle makeup altered the angles of his face just enough to pass casual scrutiny. Beside him, Finch reviewed the intelligence they'd gathered. Amelia Finch was a compact woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. After creating their new identities, she'd stayed on as Max's partner in what she called the most interesting retirement project I've ever taken. "Preston's pattern is consistent," she noted, scrolling through surveillance photos on her tablet. "Monthly trips to Switzerland. Always stays at the same hotel in Zurich. always meets with the same 3 people. She tapped an image of Preston entering a private room at an upscale restaurant, accompanied by a striking blonde woman. Katerina Volkov, former KGB, now freelance, specializes in acquiring items that aren't for sale. A thief, Max translated. An exceptionally good one, Finch corrected. Never caught. Never even suspected. The other 2 are Werner Schmidt, a forger who specializes in authentication documents, and Thomas Reed, who handles logistics, which is a nice way of saying he makes people and problems disappear. Max studied the photos with cold detachment. And Bianca? Finch hesitated. She's still playing grieving widow in public, but the performance is winding down. She's been seen more frequently at the gallery, started wearing color again. The local arts magazine did a sympathetic piece about her, finding solace in her work. The Chimera operation. Moving forward. Based on the communications we intercepted, they're planning something major. An acquisition event scheduled for next month. Details are sparse, but whatever it is, it's significant enough that Katerina flew in from Europe 3 times in the past 2 weeks. Max checked his watch. Lucas will be finishing school soon. I need to pick him up. Now enrolled as Dylan Foster in a small private school known for its security and discretion, Lucas had adapted to their new life with remarkable resilience. The school catered to the children of wealthy, privacy-conscious parents and asked no questions when Daniel Foster, a successful cybersecurity consultant and widower, enrolled his son mid-year with generous donations. Max, Finch said quietly, using his real name in the privacy of their car. We've been gathering intelligence for months. At some point, you need to decide what your endgame is. I know exactly what my endgame is, Max replied, starting the engine. I'm just waiting for all the pieces to be in position. At Lucas's school, Max waited in the line of luxury SUVs and town cars. When Lucas emerged, backpack slung over one shoulder, Max noted how his son's eyes automatically scanned the surroundings before approaching the car, a habit Max had instilled during their first weeks in hiding. How was school? Max asked as Lucas buckled his seatbelt. Good. We dissected owl pellets in science, Lucas replied. At 7, almost 8 now, he had developed a fascination with forensics that both concerned and impressed Max. Find anything interesting? 3 different types of rodent bones. Ms. Peterson said I have a good eye for detail. Lucas hesitated. Dad, Ryan invited me to his birthday party next weekend. Can I go? Max felt the familiar pang of wanting his son to have normal childhood experiences while knowing the risks. We'll see. I'll need to check the security of the venue. Lucas nodded, accepting this as he did all the strict protocols of their new life. Is Miss Finch coming for dinner? Not tonight. She's following up on some information. What Max didn't tell Lucas was that Finch was currently breaking into Bianca's new downtown apartment, while Bianca attended an exhibition opening. Some intelligence couldn't be gathered electronically. That evening, after Lucas was asleep, Max's secure phone buzzed with Finch's coded message, package acquired. Meeting point Alpha, 1 hour. Package acquired meant Finch had found something significant. Meeting Point Alpha was a 24-hour diner on the outskirts of the city where they could speak without concern for surveillance. Max checked on Lucas, then activated the advanced security system he'd installed throughout their rented house. A neighbor, a retired police officer whom Max had carefully cultivated as an ally, would keep watch while he was gone. At the diner, Finch sat in a corner booth, a coffee cup and untouched slice of pie before her. Her expression told Max everything he needed to know. It's worse than we thought, she said without preamble as he slid into the seat across from her. From her bag, she removed a small external hard drive. This was hidden in a concealed safe behind her vanity mirror. Sloppy operational security. She's gotten complacent. What's on it? Comprehensive records of Chimera operations going back 15 years. Art thefts, forgeries, blackmail, 7 arranged accidents, including yours. But that's not the worst part. Finch's voice dropped. There's a file about Lucas. Max's blood ran cold. What about him? Genetic profile, medical records, psychological assessments. They've been testing and monitoring him since birth. Max, she hesitated. They engineered him. Bianca was part of a chimera eugenics program. They wanted specific genetic traits, intelligence markers. The diner seemed to tilt around him. What are you saying? I'm saying Lucas was never a normal family addition. He was a chimera project from conception. And according to these files, they're planning to recover the asset after a suitable mourning period. They want your son. Max whispered, rage building like a physical pressure behind his eyes. Not just want. They believe they own him. The plan was always to eliminate you once Lucas reached the optimal development stage. Bianca's role was to deliver both the genetic material, yours, and provide the early developmental environment. Max's hands clenched into fists. 15 years. Our entire relationship was a long-term operation. Finch confirmed gently. I'm sorry, Max. The revelation should have destroyed him. Instead, it crystallized his resolve into something diamond-hard and unbreakable. Show me everything, he said. For the next hour, Finch walked him through the contents of the hard drive. Chimera wasn't merely an art forgery ring as they'd initially suspected, but a sprawling organization with tentacles in weapons development, human trafficking, and psychological experimentation. Their art business provided both cover and funding. The acquisition event they detected was the upcoming transfer of Lucas to a chimera facility in Switzerland, disguised as Bianca taking her traumatized son to Europe for a fresh start. There's one more thing, Finch said, pulling up a video file. This was in a folder labeled Contingency. The video showed Bianca in a sterile room being interviewed by an unseen person. Her responses were flat, detached, as she described Max's routines, weaknesses, and psychological pressure points. Subject Thorne displays excessive attachment to the child asset, she reported clinically. Recommended leverage point if extraction becomes necessary. Max watched with growing horror as his wife of 9 years discussed him like a target dossier. When the video ended, he sat in silence, processing the extent of the betrayal. What's your move? Finch finally asked. Max took a slow, controlled breath. We accelerate the timeline. Preston leaves for Zurich next week. That's when we start dismantling their operation, piece by piece. And Bianca. Max's eyes were empty of everything but purpose. I'm going to use every tactic she outlined in that video against her. By the time I'm finished, she'll wish I had died on that cliff. Preston Davenport's office at Sterling Gallery was a study in calculated impression, an original Rothko on one wall, antique desk suggesting old money, modern sculptures positioned to demonstrate his discerning eye, every element designed to convey power, taste, and success, which made the anonymous envelope on his desk all the more discordant. It was delivered by courier this morning, his assistant explained nervously. They had proper ID and paperwork. I verified before accepting. Preston dismissed her with a wave, waiting until the door closed before examining the envelope. No return address. His name printed in standard font. Inside was a single photograph. Preston meeting with Werner Schmidt 6 months ago in Zurich. A coincidence, perhaps. A random surveillance photo. But attached to the back was a handwritten note. I know about Lucas. This is your only warning. Preston's carefully maintained composure slipped. He snatched his phone and dialed Bianca. We have a problem, he said without greeting when she answered. Someone knows. Knows what? Bianca's voice was sharp with irritation. I'm in the middle of a showing, Preston. About Lucas. About the plan. Someone sent me a warning. A pause. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Don't call anyone else. When Bianca arrived, Preston had already swept his office for bugs and checked the gallery's security system. The photograph and note lay on his desk where he'd left them. Bianca picked up the photo, her face betraying nothing. This is from the Bergman meeting. Yes, 6 months ago. No one knew about that meeting except the inner circle. Bianca finished. She turned the photo over, reading the note. Her composure faltered slightly. Lucas, someone knows he's more than just your son. Preston said, pouring himself a generous scotch. Someone knows about the program. Bianca paced the office. It has to be an inside threat. No one else would connect Lucas to Chimera operations. Could Werner have talked? He's been unstable since the Amsterdam job. Possibly. Or Thomas. He wasn't happy about the fee structure on the last extraction. Bianca stopped pacing. We need to move up the timeline. Lucas needs to be secured before whoever this is makes another move. Preston shook his head. Too risky. Deviation from the plan could attract attention. Remember, as far as the world knows, you're still grieving your husband and son. Suddenly traveling with a child who's supposed to be dead would raise questions. Then what do you suggest? Bianca's tone was acid. We find the leak and eliminate it. Maintain current operations as a show of strength. I leave for Zurich as scheduled to consult with the board. You continue preparing for Lucas's extraction next month. Bianca studied him with cold calculation. Preston knew that look. She was weighing his value against his liability. Fine, she finally said. But enhance security on all fronts, and I want daily sweeps of my apartment, and a gallery for surveillance. After she left, Preston made a secure call to Thomas Reed. We have a situation. I need comprehensive counter-surveillance and a threat assessment. What neither Preston nor Bianca realized was that the entire conversation had been recorded by technology far beyond standard sweeping protocols. In a van parked 2 blocks away, Max and Finch listened to every word. Phase 1 complete, Finch noted, removing her headphones. They're rattled, but not running. Max nodded, satisfaction evident in his eyes. Divide and conquer. Preston will suspect Bianca of setting him up. Bianca will question Preston's security measures. Let's see how deep their trust really runs. The following day, Bianca received her own envelope. Inside was a USB drive containing audio of Preston speaking to someone about contingency plans if the widow becomes problematic. The recording was heavily edited, making it impossible to determine context or timing, but Preston's voice was unmistakable. Is this authentic? Bianca demanded when she stormed into Preston's office, throwing the USB drive onto his desk. Preston examined it cautiously. I haven't heard it. What does it contain? You. Discussing eliminating me once Lucas is secured. Her green eyes flashed with dangerous intensity. Is Chimera planning to remove me from the equation, Preston? Don't be absurd, he replied, though his hesitation was just a fraction too long. This is obviously manufactured to drive a wedge between us. Someone is playing us against each other. Play it, she demanded. The audio was damning in its selective editing. Preston's face remained impassive, but a muscle jumped in his jaw, the tell that Bianca had learned to recognize over their years together. This is manipulated, he insisted, taken out of context from multiple conversations. Yes, we discussed contingencies, we always do, but I never suggested eliminating you. Bianca wanted to believe him. Their partnership had been profitable and efficient, but doubt had been planted, and in their world, doubt was often the difference between survival and a convenient accident. I'm moving up Lucas extraction, she said flatly, with or without board approval. That would be a serious mistake, Preston warned. We don't know what we're dealing with yet. Rushing could expose the entire operation. I'm not losing my son, Bianca hissed. Or have you forgotten, he carries my genetic material too? Preston's laugh was cold. Your maternal instinct is touching, Bianca, especially considering you were perfectly willing to watch him fall to his death 3 months ago. The slap echoed in the office. Preston touched his reddening cheek, eyes narrowing. You're emotional. Making mistakes. This is exactly what our opponent wants. Bianca stepped back, visibly composing herself. Find a leak, Preston, before I start to believe it's you. As their carefully constructed trust began fracturing, Max implemented Phase 2. Using the detailed information from Bianca's hard drive, he systematically targeted Chimera's operational security. An anonymous tip to Interpol about Werner Schmidt's latest forgery project. A coincidental customs inspection of Thomas Reed's luggage that discovered unregistered surveillance equipment. A strategic conversation with a gallery owner competing with Sterling. Dropping just enough information about Preston's authentication processes to raise questions about a recent major sale. Small disruptions individually, but collectively, they created an atmosphere of paranoia and suspicion. Preston's trip to Zurich was extended as he dealt with the fallout. Bianca began sleeping in different locations, never the same place 2 nights in a row. 2 weeks into the operation, Finch presented Max with an unexpected development. Katerina Volkov has arrived in Denver, she reported, showing him surveillance photos of the blonde woman checking into a boutique hotel. 3 weeks ahead of schedule. And she brought muscle. The photos showed 2 hard-looking men flanking her. They're accelerating, Max concluded. Preston's losing control of the situation. What's our counter? Max considered the chessboard he'd constructed. It's time I introduced myself to Katerina. She's the weakest link in their operational structure. A contractor, not Chimera leadership. That's extremely high risk, Finch cautioned. If she identifies you. She won't, Max cut in. But she will be very interested in what I have to offer. The following evening, Katerina Volkov returned to her hotel room to find Max sitting calmly in the armchair by the window, her security detail nowhere to be seen. Your men are fine, Max said before she could react. Just temporarily indisposed. Please sit down, Ms. Volkov. I have a business proposition that will interest you. Katerina assessed him with professional detachment. You have 30 seconds before I trigger the emergency protocol. Max smiled. I'm the husband Bianca Thorne thought she killed. And I have access to the complete Chimera operational files, including the leverage they maintain on you regarding the Moscow Museum job in 2016. Katerina's composure didn't waver, but she slowly lowered herself onto the edge of the bed. Maxwell Thorne is dead. Evidently not. He placed a tablet on the coffee table between them, displaying satellite images of a remote compound. This is the Chimera facility where they're planning to take my son. The facility where they're currently holding your sister, Irina. That landed. A flash of shock crossed Katerina's face before she controlled it. You're bluffing. Irina died in a boating accident 5 years ago. That's what Chimera wanted you to believe. They've been using her as leverage to ensure your cooperation. Max swiped to show surveillance footage of a woman who resembled Katerina being escorted through a sterile hallway. This was taken 3 weeks ago. Katerina's fingers twitched toward her concealed weapon. I wouldn't, Max advised calmly. I'm offering you something Preston and Bianca never will. The truth and a chance to save your sister. What do you want? Information. Specifically, details of Lucas's extraction plan. Katerina laughed bitterly. If I betray Chimera, I'm dead. If you don't help me, Max countered, I release evidence connecting you to 11 high-profile thefts across 3 continents, and Irina remains their prisoner. A tense silence stretched between them. How do I know my sister is really alive? Katerina finally asked. Max produced a burner phone. Call this number. You can speak to her for 2 minutes. The conversation that followed was brief, emotional, and conducted in rapid Russian. When Katerina disconnected, her icy composure had cracked. What exactly do you want to know? She asked. Everything, Max replied. Starting with who really runs Chimera. Katerina Volkov's information proved invaluable. Chimera wasn't merely an art forgery and theft ring. It was a multi-generational operation specializing in creating assets with specific genetic traits. Lucas had been just one of several children bred for intelligence, physical resilience, and psychological adaptability. The genetic program started in the 1980s, Finch explained as she and Max reviewed Katerina's intelligence in their secure workspace. Soviet-era research continued under private funding. They identify candidates with desirable genetic markers, pair them through arranged relationships, and monitor the offspring. I was selected because of my intelligence profile and military background, Max said flatly. Bianca was already a Chimera operative assigned to recruit me. Yes, but there's more. Finch hesitated. According to Katerina, Bianca wasn't just following orders. She designed the operation. She's not mid-level management. She's on the board. She specifically selected you as her target. The revelation hit Max with physical force. It wasn't just their marriage that had been a lie. It was the calculated culmination of Bianca's life's work, and Preston, her subordinate. Technically, though they maintained the fiction of him being in charge for operational security, the gallery provided perfect cover for their real business. Max absorbed this, recalibrating his understanding of his enemy and Lucas's extraction plan, which was scheduled for next week. Earlier than they had thought, Bianca had arranged a private flight to Switzerland, officially for art acquisition. Lucas would be sedated and transported in a specially designed cargo container. Once in Europe, he'd be taken to the research facility Katerina had identified. We need to move now, Max decided. Is Katerina cooperating? Fully. The evidence you provided about her sister was compelling. She's agreed to feed Bianca and Preston false information, while providing us with real-time intelligence. Max studied the facility schematics Katerina had provided. We need to contact Howard. His military connections will be essential for the next phase. While Finch made the arrangements, Max spent the evening with Lucas. Their ritual movie night, complete with popcorn and Lucas's favorite root beer, had become sacred time in their new life. Tonight's selection was a dinosaur documentary. Lucas curled against Max's side on the couch. Dad, Lucas asked during a quiet moment, are we ever going to stop moving around and hiding? Max considered his answer carefully. Soon. I'm working on making us completely safe. Lucas nodded thoughtfully. Is it because of what Mom did? The directness of the question caught Max off guard. They discussed the betrayal in age-appropriate terms, but he tried to shield Lucas from the worst of it. Yes, Max admitted. Mom is involved with dangerous people. That's why we need to be careful. Lucas was quiet for a long moment. I remember what I saw on her computer that night. They weren't just passports. There were pictures of kids in hospital gowns. Max felt his chest tighten. What kind of pictures, Lucas? Like medical pictures, with charts and numbers. One of the kids looked like me. Lucas looked up, his eyes too serious for his age. Was Mom doing experiments on kids? Max pulled his son closer. The people she works with do very bad things, but I promise you, they're not going to hurt anyone else once I'm finished. Lucas seemed satisfied with this and turned his attention back to the documentary. But the conversation highlighted what Max already knew. His son was perceptive beyond his years, retaining details that most adults would miss. The genetic engineering Chimera had orchestrated had produced exactly what they wanted. A child with exceptional cognitive abilities. What they hadn't anticipated was that those same abilities would help Lucas survive their attempt to kill him. The following day, Max executed the next phase of his plan. Using data from Bianca's hard drive and Katerina's intelligence, he identified Chimera's financial structure. Through a complex web of shell companies and offshore accounts, they had amassed billions in assets, including the contributions from Max's accounts after his supposed death. Working with a financial specialist Finch had recruited, Max began systematically attacking those assets. Irregular activity reports were filed with banking authorities. Anonymous tips were sent to financial crimes units in 7 countries. Digital traces were planted to suggest internal embezzlement. By midday, Preston was fielding panic calls from Chimera board members as accounts were frozen and audits initiated. Bianca remained publicly composed, but private surveillance showed her increasingly erratic behavior, drinking heavily, berating gallery staff, making cryptic phone calls at odd hours. The pressure Max applied increased daily. Howard's military contacts provided intelligence on Chimera's facility security. Katerina delivered coded messages about board discussions. Finch monitored Bianca's and Preston's movements with ruthless efficiency. 6 days before the scheduled extraction, Preston received another envelope. This one contained something that drained the color from his face. Comprehensive evidence of his involvement in 3 deaths disguised as accidents, complete with financial transfers, communications, and witness statements. "We've been compromised at the highest level," he told Bianca when she arrived at his penthouse that evening. "Someone knows everything. All of it." Bianca reviewed the evidence with professional detachment that belied her internal panic. "This is an inside job. No one else could have this level of detail." "The board is pointing fingers at us," Preston said, pouring himself a third scotch. "The Frankfurt and Singapore accounts are frozen. Zurich is under regulatory review. What about the facility?" "Still secure, but for how long?" Preston ran a hand through his thinning hair. "We need to extract Lucas now." Bianca nodded. "I've already made arrangements. The plane leaves tomorrow night." "What about the supplies?" "The medical team. They'll meet us in Zurich. Right now, securing Lucas is the priority." Bianca's phone chimed with an encrypted message. Her expression hardened as she read it. "The board has called an emergency session. They're sending Carl to assist with the extraction." Preston swore softly. Carl Bergman was the board's enforcement specialist, sent when an operation needed to be salvaged or eliminated. "When does he arrive?" "He's already here," Bianca said grimly. "And he's not alone." What they didn't know was that their entire conversation was being relayed to Max in real time. Carl Bergman's arrival complicated matters, but also presented an opportunity. The more Chimera resources concentrated in Denver, the more vulnerable their other operations became. "They're moving tomorrow," Max told his assembled team that night. Howard had arrived with 3 former Special Forces operators he trusted implicitly. Finch had completed the extensive technological preparations. Katerina was providing minute-by-minute intelligence on Chimera movements. Bianca plans to sedate Lucas during a memorial visit to a park dedicated to deceased children, Katerina reported. "The transport will be disguised as medical evacuation, a child having a seizure. The plane is scheduled for midnight departure." Max nodded, his expression betraying nothing of the cold rage that fueled him. "Then we implement the final phase tonight. Everyone knows their roles." The team confirmed their readiness. The operation Max had designed was precisely calibrated, simultaneously targeting Chimera's finances, security, and leadership structure. There would be no second chances. "Remember," Max said as they prepared to deploy, Bianca impressed in our mind. "No matter what happens, they don't leave Denver alive." The first sign that something had gone catastrophically wrong came at 3:17 a.m. when the secure line connecting Chimera's Denver operation to their European headquarters went silent. The sophisticated communication system designed to withstand everything from power outages to targeted cyberattacks simply disappeared from the network. At 3:22 a.m., the backup system failed to activate. At 3:46 a.m., Preston Davenport was jolted awake by his security alarm. The system indicated multiple perimeter breaches at his penthouse, all access points simultaneously compromised. By the time his security team responded, the intruders had vanished, leaving behind only an envelope on his pillow containing a single playing card, the King of Spades with a red X drawn across it, the traditional executioner's card. "Lock down everything," Preston ordered his head of security. "And give me Bianca." But Bianca wasn't answering. At her apartment, a similar scene had unfolded. Security breaches, no intruders found, and a Queen of Spades left on her dresser mirror. When Carl Bergman received his Jack of Spades at the hotel where Chimera had installed him, the message became unmistakable. Someone was systematically targeting their leadership, and they knew exactly where to find them. By dawn, Chimera was in chaos. Their secure servers had been breached, sensitive files deleted or corrupted. Financial accounts that had survived the initial attack were now completely inaccessible. Operatives reported surveillance detection. Safe houses compromised. "It's him," Bianca said when she, Preston, and Carl finally convened in Sterling Gallery's secure room. "It has to be." "That's impossible," Preston insisted. "We confirmed the bodies were never recovered, but the fall was survivable with the right training and equipment." Carl interrupted, his German accent thickening with stress. "Maxwell Thorne was naval intelligence. Such men are difficult to kill." "Then why wait 3 months?" Preston demanded. "Why not come after us immediately?" "Because he's not just trying to kill us," Bianca realized, cold dread settling in her stomach. "He's dismantling Chimera. Systematically. This is a coordinated operation, targeting our entire infrastructure." Carl nodded grimly. "The board has gone dark. Our European operations are under attack. This is not the work of one man. This is a team." "Focus on what matters," Bianca snapped. "We move Lucas today. Now, whatever it takes." "The original plan is compromised," Carl pointed out. "If Thorne is alive, he'll be watching for exactly that move." "Then we create a diversion," Preston suggested. "Something significant enough to draw his attention while we extract the boy." Bianca considered this. The gallery opening tonight. Over 300 guests, including the governor. High security, media presence. A very public target, Carl agreed. It would force him to either abandon his pursuit of the boy or risk exposure. "I'll accelerate the extraction plan," Bianca decided. "Carl, you'll coordinate security at the gallery. Preston, prepare the alternative transportation route we discussed." None of them noticed the nearly invisible device attached beneath the conference table, transmitting every word to Max's team. "They're splitting up," Finch noted as they listened to the Chimera leadership's planning. "Exactly as you predicted." Max nodded, studying the gallery blueprints before him. "They think they're setting a trap, but they're walking into ours. Bianca will handle Lucas's extraction personally. She doesn't trust anyone else with him." "What about Carl Bergman?" "He's tough, dangerous. He's also predictable. He'll establish defense perimeters, focus on exterior threats. He won't be looking for what's already inside." Max turned to Howard. "Are your people in position?" Howard nodded. 2 on gallery staff, 1 on catering. They'll access the secure room during the pre-event confusion. Max checked his watch. 10 hours until the gallery opening. 10 hours to finalize the most important operation of his life. "Let's end this," he said quietly. The Sterling Gallery glittered with Denver's elite that evening. The exhibition, Rebirth, Finding Light After Loss, featured Bianca's new sculptures, created in the months following her tragic loss. Art critics praised the raw emotion in the pieces. Wealthy patrons competed to purchase them. No one noticed the catering staff moving efficiently through the crowd. No one questioned when a maintenance worker briefly accessed the electrical room. No one paid attention to the new security guard stationed near the rear entrance. Bianca moved through the gallery with practiced grace, accepting condolences and compliments with equal composure. Only someone who knew her intimately would notice the tension in her shoulders. The way her eyes constantly scanned the room spoke volumes. Preston stayed close to the gallery's secure room, ostensibly managing the event, but actually coordinating with Carl Bergman, who monitored security from a command center established in Preston's office. At 8:47 p.m., Bianca received a text from the extraction team. "Package secured, en route to delivery point." Relief washed through her. They had Lucas. In less than 3 hours, they would be airborne, leaving this disaster behind. She moved toward Preston to share the news when the gallery lights flickered once, twice, then stabilized. A silent signal. Something had gone wrong. Preston's face confirmed it as he approached, tension evident in every line of his body. "We've lost contact with the extraction team," he murmured, guiding her toward a quiet corner. Last transmission indicated they had secured the target, but now, nothing. "What about the transport team?" "Also dark." Carl is trying to re-establish communication. Fear gripped Bianca for the first time in years. Not for herself, but for the project, for Lucas, the culmination of her life's work. Losing him was unacceptable. "I'm going to the rendezvous point myself," she decided. "That's exactly what he wants," Preston warned. "To draw you out. I don't care. Lucas is too valuable to risk." As Bianca moved toward the exit, the gallery's sound system emitted a sharp feedback whine. Then, replacing the ambient music, a single voice filled the space, a voice Bianca had believed she would never hear again. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen," Max's voice announced calmly. "I apologize for interrupting this celebration of my wife's artistic achievements, but I thought it appropriate to make a small announcement." The crowd murmured in confusion. Bianca froze, blood draining from her face. "For those who don't know me, my name is Maxwell Thorne. You may have heard of my tragic death alongside my son Lucas some months ago." Reports of our demise were somewhat exaggerated. Gasps and confused exclamations rippled through the gallery. Security personnel began moving toward the sound system controls, but found themselves subtly blocked by catering staff. "My wife, Bianca, has been telling a fascinating story about our accident," Max's voice continued conversationally. "But fiction has always been her specialty, perhaps even more so than sculpture. For example, most of you don't know that the pieces you're admiring tonight aren't actually created by Bianca at all. They're the work of 3 unacknowledged artists who were eliminated once their usefulness ended." Preston was frantically signaling security while attempting to locate the source of the broadcast. Carl barked orders into his communication device, receiving no response. "But that's a minor deception compared to others," Max continued. "I've taken the liberty of preparing a small exhibition of my own, one that tells a more accurate story. You'll find it in the private viewing room that Mr. Davenport has been so carefully guarding tonight." As if on cue, the secure room's door swung open. Inside, the walls were covered with photographs, documents, and video screens, a comprehensive exposé of Chimera operations, with Bianca and Preston featured prominently. Chaos erupted. Patrons pushed toward the secure room. Security attempted to block access. Journalists present for the exhibition began recording everything. Bianca didn't waste time looking. She knew exactly what Max had done. With Preston close behind, she headed for the emergency exit, only to find it blocked by police officers. "This way," Preston hissed, pulling her toward a service corridor. "We have a contingency route." They hurried through the passage, emerging into the alley behind the gallery where a car waited, engine running. Preston yanked open the driver's door. The interior light revealed Max sitting calmly behind the wheel. "Hello, Bianca," he said pleasantly. "Looking for Lucas? He's safe, far safer than he ever was with you." Preston reached for his concealed weapon, but before he could draw, the sharp crack of a silenced pistol split the air. He crumpled to the ground, blood blooming from his chest. "You always did let him take point," Max noted, stepping from the car. "Useful when checking for threats." Bianca maintained her composure, analyzing escape routes, assessing the threat. Max stood between her and the street. The alley behind her ended in a fence too high to scale quickly. "Where is my son?" she demanded. "Your son?" Max's voice hardened. "The boy you pushed off a cliff. The child you engineered as part of a eugenics program. That's not a mother, Bianca. That's a monster." "You don't understand what Lucas is," Bianca said, taking a careful step backward. "He's more important than either of us. His genetic profile makes him a 7-year-old boy who likes dinosaurs and struggles with fractions." Max cut in. "Not an asset, not an experiment. A child." "You've destroyed decades of work," Bianca said, anger finally breaking through her control facade. "Generations of planning. For what? Some outdated concept of family." "For justice," Max replied simply. "Chimera is finished, Bianca. Your accounts are seized. Your facilities raided. Your board members in custody or dead. Carl Bergman is currently bleeding out in Preston's office. The extraction team never had Lucas. They've been in custody for hours. Bianca's mind raced, recalculating, looking for leverage. You won't kill me, Max. Not in cold blood. It's not who you are. You're right. Max agreed, surprising her. The Max you married wouldn't. But he died on that cliff. The man standing before you now is someone else entirely. Someone you created when you tried to murder our son. He raised his weapon unhurriedly. Bianca, recognizing the resolve in his eyes, made a desperate lunge toward him, hoping to disarm him before he could fire. 3 shots echoed in the alley. Bianca stumbled, looked down at the spreading crimson stains on her silk blouse, then back at Max with genuine surprise. I loved you, she whispered, blood bubbling at her lips. In your way, Max replied without emotion. I know. That's the tragedy of it. As sirens wailed in the distance, Max watched the light fade from the eyes of the woman he'd once built a life with. No satisfaction came with her death. Only the grim certainty that Lucas would now be safe. Finch appeared at the mouth of the alley. Police are securing the gallery. Howard has the evidence packages ready for the FBI. We need to move. Max nodded, taking one last look at the bodies of the people who had orchestrated his family's destruction. Then he turned and walked away without looking back. 1 month after the Sterling Gallery incident, Denver was still buzzing with the scandal. News outlets dubbed it the Chimera Conspiracy, the exposure of an international criminal organization operating under the cover of the art world. The FBI, Interpol, and agencies from 7 countries conducted raids on Chimera facilities, discovering horrors that shocked even seasoned investigators. Evidence provided by an anonymous source detailed decades of criminal activity: art forgery, money laundering, blackmail, human trafficking, illegal genetic experimentation, and multiple murders disguised as accidents. Preston Davenport and Bianca Thorne, found dead behind the gallery, were identified as key operatives. The official story, carefully constructed by Max and his team, reported that Maxwell and Lucas Thorne had survived their fall from Eagle's Precipice, but gone into hiding after realizing Bianca had orchestrated the accident. After gathering evidence against Chimera, Max had contacted federal authorities, leading to the organization's downfall. Preston and Bianca's deaths were attributed to internal Chimera conflict, the organization eliminating liabilities as it collapsed. In reality, Max, Lucas, and their core team had relocated to a coastal property in Oregon, purchased through layers of shells and trusts. The sprawling house overlooking the Pacific provided both security and the peaceful environment Lucas needed to heal. The last of the Chimera children have been located, Finch reported one evening as she, Max, and Howard sat on the deck watching the sunset. Lucas was inside with his tutor, a child psychologist specializing in trauma recovery. 17 in total, ages 4 to 16, all products of their genetic program. What will happen to them? Howard asked. Most have been placed with screened foster families. The older ones with the most extensive conditioning are in specialized therapeutic facilities, Finch said, sipping her wine. It's remarkable how many influential families were involved, knowingly or unknowingly. And the board members? Max asked. 3 dead, including Carl Bergman. 4 in custody, 2 still unaccounted for, Finch replied, studying Max's expression. The FBI believes they've fled to non-extradition countries. They're effectively neutralized. Make sure we maintain surveillance, Max instructed. I want to know immediately if they attempt to rebuild. Howard cleared his throat. Have you decided what to tell Lucas? It was the question Max had been wrestling with for weeks. How much should a 7-year-old know about his origins, about the organization that had engineered his existence, about what his father had done to ensure his safety? The truth, Max finally said, gradually and age-appropriately, but lies have already caused too much damage. Finch nodded approvingly. The psychological assessment indicates he's remarkably resilient. His attachment to you is secure. That's the foundation he needs. Max excused himself to check on Lucas, finding him in the study with Dr. Landry, completing a cognitive exercise disguised as a game. Lucas's face brightened when he saw Max. "Dad," Dr. Landry says, "I'm setting records on the memory tests." "That's great, buddy," Max said, ruffling his son's hair. 5 more minutes. Then how about we take a walk on the beach before dinner?" Lucas nodded enthusiastically. Max exchanged a glance with Dr. Landry, who gave a subtle nod indicating they'd talk later about Lucas's progress. On the beach, Lucas ran ahead, collecting interesting stones and shell fragments, occasionally bringing his treasures for Max's inspection. The simple normalcy of the moment struck Max with almost painful intensity. "Dad," Lucas called, waving from where waves lapped at his feet. "Can we go swimming tomorrow, if it's warm enough?" "Sure," Max agreed, watching his son's delight with a mixture of love and fierce protectiveness. Later that night, after Lucas was asleep, Max sat at his desk reviewing security protocols with the same methodical attention he'd once given to naval intelligence operations. The property was a fortress. Cutting-edge systems, trusted personnel, multiple escape routes, and contingency plans. A soft knock at the door preceded Finch's entrance. She placed a file before him. The final DNA analysis from the Chimera research facility. Max had been waiting for this report with equal parts dread and necessity. It would confirm exactly what they'd done to Lucas's genetic makeup. "It's remarkable work in a purely scientific sense," Finch said, as Max read. "They enhanced cognitive processing, immune response, cellular regeneration. But there were trade-offs they either didn't anticipate or didn't care about." Max looked up sharply. "What kind of trade-offs?" "Potential issues down the road. Nothing immediate, but the accelerated neural development could have long-term consequences. Dr. Landry's monitoring program will be essential." Max closed the file, struggling to contain his rage at what had been done to his son without consent, the manipulation of his very essence before he'd even been conceived. "We'll manage whatever comes," he said with quiet determination. "Lucas will have every resource, every support he needs." Finch studied him with perceptive eyes. "You've given up the idea of returning to your old life, haven't you?" Maxwell Thorne made his public statement, provided his evidence, and has retired to raise his son in privacy, Max confirmed. "Daniel Foster will continue the security consulting business from here." "And the team?" "Howard's staying through the summer. You're welcome as long as you want." Max managed a small smile. "Though I imagine the retirement project will eventually grow dull for someone with your talents." Finch shrugged. "There's still work to be done. 2 board members unaccounted for. Associated operations that escaped the initial purge. I find I'm rather invested in seeing this through to the end." Max nodded gratefully. They'd formed a family of sorts, bound by shared purpose and the fierce protection of a child who'd been treated as an experiment rather than a person. Later, making his final security rounds before sleep, Max paused at Lucas's bedroom door. The nightlight cast a gentle glow over his son's sleeping form. No trace remained of the frightened boy who had whispered warnings on a cliff ledge. In its place was a child gradually reclaiming his right to ordinary childhood joys. Max made a silent promise, not just to protect Lucas from external threats, but to ensure he grew up knowing he was valued for himself, not for what Chimera had engineered him to be. Whatever challenges came, whatever Lucas might eventually become, Max would be there to guide him toward becoming his own person, freed from the legacy of betrayal that had nearly destroyed them both. 2 years later, on a crisp autumn morning much like the day of their supposed deaths, Max stood at the edge of their property, watching Lucas practice rock climbing on the natural formation they'd had professionally equipped with safety gear. At 9, Lucas showed the same methodical focus that had helped him survive the cliff fall, testing each handhold before committing his weight. "He's getting good," Howard observed, joining Max on the observation deck. Now a permanent part of their household, Howard divided his time between veterinary work in the nearest town and security operations for what remained of their team. "He's fearless," Max agreed, pride evident in his voice. "Not fearless," Howard corrected. "He respects the danger. There's a difference." Lucas reached the summit and waved triumphantly before preparing for his controlled descent. Max waved back, marveling at his son's resilience. The nightmares had gradually subsided. The hypervigilance had evolved into healthy caution. The trauma remained a part of him, but no longer defined him. Finch emerged from the house, tablet in hand. "We have confirmation. Victor Kroll has been located." Max's expression hardened. Victor Kroll, the last unaccounted-for Chimera board member, had been traced to a compound in Malaysia. For 2 years, their network had hunted him, following money trails and surveillance footage across 3 continents. "Is he still operational?" Max asked. "Limited capacity. He's gathered some former Chimera scientists, but nothing approaching their previous capabilities," Finch reported, displaying satellite imagery of a heavily secured estate. "Our sources indicate he's trying to access backup data on the genetic program." "Lucas's data," Max concluded. "Among others, yes. He seems fixated on recovering what was lost." Howard frowned. "Even with his resources diminished, he's dangerous." "Desperate men with nothing to lose usually are," Max agreed, watching Lucas begin his climbing descent, movements precise and confident. "Prepare the operation. I want options on my desk by dinner." "You're not going yourself," Howard said, making it a statement rather than a question. "No," Max confirmed. "Those days are over. This stays with the team." Later, while Lucas completed his studies with his tutor, Max reviewed the operational plans Finch had prepared. Clean, efficient, deniable, with multiple contingencies for every variable. The Max of 3 years ago might have questioned the ethics of such ruthless planning. Now he simply nodded approval. "Authorization code?" Finch asked, preparing to transmit the orders to their field team. Max provided the code that would initiate Victor Kroll's removal, the final act in dismantling Chimera's leadership. No hesitation, no remorse. That evening, as they prepared dinner together, another routine Max had established to create normalcy, Lucas asked suddenly, "Dad, are we ever going back?" "Back where, buddy?" "To our old house, to Colorado." Lucas carefully chopped vegetables, his knife skills impressively precise for his age. "Tani at school says his family moved because his dad got a new job, but they visit their old home sometimes." Max considered how to answer. Lucas knew a simplified version of why they'd relocated, that his mother and Preston had tried to hurt them, that they'd done bad things, that they were gone now. But the full truth of Chimera, of Lucas's genetic engineering, of what Max had done to protect him, those were conversations for the future. "I don't think so," Max said honestly. "Too many difficult memories there. But if you'd like to visit Colorado someday, we could go to different places. The mountains, maybe. Would you like that?" Lucas nodded thoughtfully. "Maybe when I'm older." He resumed chopping. "Dad, do you miss Mom sometimes?" The question caught Max unprepared. "I miss who I thought she was," he answered carefully. "But that person wasn't real. I remember she used to sing to me," Lucas said quietly. "When I was little, was that real?" Max's throat tightened. "Yes, that was real." "Your mother was complicated, Lucas. She did love you in her way. She just loved other things more." Lucas seemed to accept this, moving on to set the table with typical efficiency. Max marveled at his ability to compartmentalize, another trait that might have been engineered, or might simply be his natural response to trauma. That night, after Lucas was asleep, Max received confirmation. Victor Kroll had been eliminated. All known data relating to Chimera's genetic program had been secured and was being transported to their secure facility for analysis and destruction. "It's over," Finch said simply when she delivered the news. "Chimera is finished." But Max knew better. Organizations like Chimera were never truly finished. They metastasized, evolved, re-emerged under new leadership. The vigilance would need to continue. The security protocols maintained, the network of informants preserved. Yet something had shifted. A chapter had closed. The immediate threat to Lucas had been eliminated. In his study, Max opened the safe behind a landscape painting and removed a thick file. His contingency plans for Lucas should anything happen to him. Guardianship arrangements, trust structures, educational provisions, security protocols. Everything Lucas would need to navigate a world that might still contain threats from his past. Howard and Finch were the designated guardians, with a network of trusted individuals as backup. Financial resources were structured to provide lifetime security while incentivizing independence. Most importantly, the file contained letters Max had written to Lucas at different ages, guidance and truth for the boy to access as he matured. Max updated the document as he did regularly, then returned it to the safe. Some might call it paranoia. He considered it responsible parenting under extraordinary circumstances. The following morning, Lucas found him at the breakfast table reviewing security locks. "Dad, can we go fishing today?" "Just us." Max looked up, seeing the simple request for what it was, a child's desire for normalcy, for connection, for the undivided attention of his remaining parent. "Absolutely," he agreed, closing his laptop. "Just us." Later, as they sat on the dock extending into the cove below their property, fishing lines cast into the clear water, Lucas leaned comfortably against Max's side. The easy silence between them felt like healing. "Dad," Lucas asked, watching his line for movement, "are you happy here?" The question was surprisingly perceptive, acknowledging that their new life had been built from necessity rather than choice. Max considered honestly before answering. "I'm happy you're safe. I'm happy we're together." He ruffled Lucas's hair. "The rest will come." Lucas nodded, seemingly satisfied. "I like it here. The ocean, the forest, my school." He paused. "But I don't want you to be lonely." Max looked at his son with surprise. "I'm not lonely, Lucas. I have you, Howard, Finch, our team." "But that's work," Lucas said with 9-year-old wisdom. "Tommy's dad says adults need friends too." And he hesitated, suddenly uncertain. "And what?" Max prompted gently. "And maybe someday you could find someone else. Not like Mom," he added quickly, "but someone good. Someone who likes us both." Max was momentarily speechless at his son's generosity, his ability to imagine a future beyond the betrayal that had shaped their recent years. "Maybe someday," Max agreed, pulling Lucas close, "but I'm pretty content with how things are right now." They sat in comfortable silence, the rhythmic sound of waves against the shore creating a peaceful backdrop. Max realized that despite everything, the trauma, the violence, the reconstruction of their lives, they had found a measure of peace. He couldn't change the circumstances of Lucas's creation, couldn't erase the genetic manipulation or the purpose Chimera had intended for him, couldn't shield him forever from the truth of his origins. But he could ensure that Lucas's future would be his own to determine, freed from Chimera's influence, defined by his own choices rather than the genetic destiny others had attempted to impose. The fishing line suddenly went taut. Lucas sat up excitedly. "Dad, I got one." "Steady," Max coached. "Remember what I taught you. Take your time." As Lucas expertly played the fish, his face alight with concentration and joy, Max felt a rare moment of perfect certainty. Whatever challenges the future held, and there would be many, they would face them together, not as Chimera's experimental subject and his handler, not as victim and protector, but simply as father and son. And that, Max decided as he watched Lucas reel in his catch with triumphant laughter, was enough.